Hello, everybody. Aaron Lelito here, and I have a guest to talk with today. Her name is September Herrin, and I'll let September kind of say a little bit about her background, primarily as editor of Weird Lit Mag. That was our connection point to get connected today. So we'll cover a little bit of that. But there's lots of other interesting things in September's background, and we'll dig in um, soon. So September, who are you? That's the big question for starters.
That's a great question. I feel like I'm continuously trying to answer that for myself. Um, I am the editor-in-chief at Weird Lit Mag. We have been around for not quite a year, actually. We're about to put out our third issue this coming Saturday on the solstice. Um, I work as a freelance book editor, and I'm also a writer. My crew on the Meg, we all met through the writing scene here in Seattle, through various writing groups, and I actually started my own writing group about 2 years ago. We're called Sasquatch Club. We don't only write about Sasquatch, but we definitely talk about Sasquatch a lot. But through that group, I met a handful of really amazing writers and editors, and we've come to find that we had a lot of common, not just tastes, but ambitions and ideas. And thus, here we are with Weird Lit. Uh, yeah, so that's me in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, so I think you fit the bill as far as somebody like I like to talk to and to kind of follow some of those avenues from editing, like you said, a lit mag, book editing, freelancer,
Mhm.
writer, member of a writing group. Um, so we can maybe tackle the writing
For
aspect
sure,
first. That's
for sure.
I'm assuming that came before the editing, in
Mhm.
terms of like being interested in the creative arts or writing in particular. So like, how did you get into it? How did you become interested in writing and in the literary forms?
So I've been writing since I was a kid, and I I've written all kinds of stuff, nonfiction, fiction, poetry, lyrics. Lyrics are where I actually got started getting serious. I spent just under a decade in a rock band actually here in Seattle, a goth punk band, and wrote lyrics for that band and did all the marketing and all that fun stuff too. uh, anyway, post band years, I started getting even more into fiction writing. Started trying to write novels, short stories, that sort of thing. Yeah, as far as what I write, and when it comes to fiction, I write a lot of flash fiction, and then novel length works, which is funny. I can't. I feel like anything between 2,000 and like 70,000 words is just not for me. It's the really short stuff or the long stuff. Yeah, so I've got a few novels under my belt, nothing published yet. I've had a handful of short stories published, and I'm constantly querying and working on those. The writing group has been so fantastic. We, as far as like when it comes to producing work, we have a monthly contest where we write something based on some kind of wacky theme, and that's really helped in the last couple of years to get my chops up, and then also just like getting in the habit of putting out material regularly. But yeah, like writing has been part of me for as long as I can remember, and it's kind of evolved with me, my tastes, my style, how I use it, like as an outlet, because that's usually what it is for me, with which is the case for most creatives, I'm sure. Um, but yeah, it's just writing and music, they're like my soul. So
Excellent. Yeah. Um, just to touch on the writing group for one moment,
Mm.
what's an example of like a an unusual like prompt or something like you mentioned having like a challenge? Like
Okay.
what would be, I don't know if there's one off the top of your head or something that might, kind of spark
Uh,
an
so
idea.
so for a while we were all, well, I'm continually obsessed with cryptids, but I don't force everyone to write about them all the time. But for a while we were on this cryptid kick. So for a few months in a row, it was like different cryptids. Like I really enjoyed I wrote this flash fiction piece about mermaids, and I happened to be reading Bret Easton Ellis's American Psycho while I was working on that piece, so it got really twisted. It was really fun. Um, Lots of Sasquatch stuff. It's not only, weird, like, gosh, what else? Yeah, my mind is kind of blanking on some of the themes, but they've been, we've done like one theme was like reclaiming your power. Um, we all in this group we're all, into absurdism, so some kind of Sisyphean tales. Um, yeah, oh man, I'm trying to think of some other ones. We had like a crawling out of the dark last winter. We're all here in the Pacific Northwest where it is just the winters can be kind of dreary, not kind of quite dreary, which I'm an it, I'm a goth at heart, so I love it. It's fine. But uh we definitely all needed a boost. So there was I think it was January of last year. We're like, let's write a story about coming out of winter, coming out of this darkness. And that was a really actually wonderful thing to do. So we kind of, yeah, just kind of fly by the seat of our pants when it comes to what kind of themes. But because we're a small, intimate group, we all are able to, I don't know, get the chance to write the things we want to write and explore what we want to explore. So that's pretty cool.
That's great. Yeah. So, I mean, I know that's part of our mission at Wild Roof Journals to just create some kind of creative community, um, even as an online platform. So it's a different ballgame in a sense, but it's always good to hear and kind of get in tune with kind of the benefits of, like you said, sitting down in a group, whether it is, on Zoom or in real life,
Mhm.
and having the opportunity and the space to like create something that you might not normally do, right? You're all doing maybe you're working with a certain prompt or topic or different approach and say, here it is.
Mhm.
And if I'm anticipating,
Yeah.
some of these benefits, it's not necessarily the story you write from the group. That's the story. That's like,
Mhm.
you want published or something. Um, but you can take a piece of it. It sparks, something else that can
Yeah,
go in a different
exactly.
direction. Um, or
It's
even a
also,
line. Yeah, you could go down to a micro level, like use a line or sentence.
yeah, for sure. It's also fascinating and enlightening to see how we all interpret the prompt, the many different ways. It's fantastic. Actually, one of my favorite prompts I'm now remembering was uh last fall we did a weird Western. And there's so many subgenres of Westerns, and it was fantastic to see all the different things people went with. And I think a few of those stories ended up getting published, which was really cool. And actually, quite a few of the stories we've all written over the past couple of years have been published. And it's been because of our group, because we go further than just having a prompt. We end up doing feedback and all that kind of stuff. So we also I run our Discord, and we have a channel on there that's specifically for publication progress. So every time we submit somewhere, we post in there, and every time we get a rejection, we post in there. And it feels so good. It's like it makes that process more palatable and like um I don't know. I've been aiming for 100 rejections this year, and I don't know if we'll get it. There's still a couple weeks left. And I don't think I would have kept that up without my crew. So it's really fun to commiserate, and yeah, groups are vital for sure.
Sure. Yeah, there's the motivational aspect, which you can't deny, even
Mhm.
in any
Mhm.
other context, having a group of people going through similar experiences, it pushes you a little bit more than um, just submitting randomly throughout the year
Yeah,
and
yeah,
getting a random number of rejections as opposed to something
right,
we're all kind of getting to. And that's no joke. I mean, getting 100 rejections in a year, I mean, that's impressive in its own right. I mean, anybody who's
right, right,
submitted to any degree
right,
knows how it works. And just to get even even it's unlikely probably that it's 100 out of 100 rejections. That means
right,
you're submitting a lot more, and of course you're getting some of these accepted along the way.
right, right.
Um, but yeah, so being connected to that process and kind of having your finger on the pulse of it, then you're getting exposed to new publications and other
Yeah,
writers
yes,
who are then published in those publications and all the different branches that kind of grew up from that. So yeah,
yeah,
it's a lot that's kind of packed into a little goal like that, like, oh,
yeah,
X amount of submissions per year.
for
Um,
sure.
yeah, so I can't ignore the music connection because it's fascinating to me. And although I was not a musician in any strict sense of the word, um, that connection, music slash lyrics and writing, kind of more literary art form, has just
Mhm.
been, it's not even, it's kind of inseparable, right? It's like you said,
Right.
um, just in the way my whole kind of like aesthetic and thought process about this was developed in, going back to like adolescence, right?
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
are kind of exposed to some of these different media. So, um, tell me more, I guess is my my question is, can you tell me more about your experience writing lyrics as a musician? Um, we'll start there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so going way back, I started writing poetry, which so many like teenagers do. And then eventually, and I've always been so into music. And eventually I thought, okay, maybe I should try my hand at lyrics. And so I did that and started, I actually grew up in a really small town in a rural county here in Washington. Like the town I grew up in, the population was like 800 people, like really small. And not a huge music scene in that area. So I worked with what I had. I found the rural goths and freaks, and that was a gold mine of inspiration and community. It was fantastic. So I did end up like making friends there who were musicians and started actually writing lyrics for them. And it was a good way to kind of, I don't know, test the waters. I eventually moved to Seattle with the goal of starting a band, and it's this like classic dream of kids in, small towns in Washington, probably, all over, but gonna move to Seattle when I grow up and I'm gonna do rock and roll. Um, yeah, and so I got down here and I actually was studying audio engineering and realized I wanted to be on the other side of the mixing board. I mean, I knew that, but I wasn't certain yet. All it took was going to school and realizing, no, 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 this is not like my thing. Um, yeah, just too much technicality in it. Anyway, so yeah, I started a band and we were super DIY punk ethics, which is what I still run by. Kind of how I approach everything, which works sometimes, others it doesn't. Yeah, and through most of those years in the band, I always worked jobs like as a, my side gig would be like as a barista. So at like I would always aim for the slowest coffee shops I could find so I could actually spend my time there writing lyrics. And that's what I did. I, sling coffee and write lyrics. And in my little black moleskin, I've been using the same moleskin journals since I was like 20. I have like a giant stack of them here. Yeah, and sometimes they'd come, the lyrics would come first. Sometimes the lyrics would be inspired by the music. I don't know, it was a really amazing experience that I had with my band because we were unique in that we were together for almost a decade and we actually all lived together in the same house. It was this very, I don't know, we built a recording studio in our basement. We were kind of this hub for up and coming punk bands in Seattle in the like early to mid aughts through the early tens. And it was just a really fantastic time. Such a bizarre industry for sure. Um, really weird, very different from publishing. It's been I it's very interesting to go from rock and roll to publishing where so far I haven't had to bribe anyone with drugs. Like it's very interesting. Like, I mean, I guess I could if I wanted to, but I don't need to. Anyway, yeah. So, and my lyrics a lot of times would tell stories. I've always been a storyteller. And when I started writing flash fiction, I definitely borrowed from my methods of lyric writing because it's the same. I kind of view it as the same thing. Like a flash piece is like a song, and you only have so many words to tell that song, or tell that story, just like in a song, you only have so many minutes really to tell. So, yeah, and alongside music, I was always also kind of dabbling in fiction, but mostly, sticking with the lyrics.
Yeah, that's I always wanted a recording studio in the basement. So that's like
Yeah.
some unfulfilled fantasy of mine to have my
What
own.
stopped you?
Well, probably a lot of things. I don't I
No,
never really
I'm
learned
yeah.
I never really learned to play an instrument very well.
Oh, okay.
So there was that kind of that kind of limitation. Technologically, not super into the recording technology, although, there was a phase where I kind of learned, how to use a, interface on the laptop to,
Right.
put
Well, I
in,
think now
plug
it
in an instrument and record. Like I figured
right.
that
Well,
far out, but
yeah, but nowadays it is so like, oh my goodness, some of the stuff that's out there makes it so much easier, which is wonderful because I know back in the day, like we didn't have money. It was very difficult, we would forego some basic things so that we could buy that new mixing board or whatever. And now, like, it's cheaper and it's easier to do, which is fantastic. But yeah, it is, no, it was a pretty big undertaking for sure.
yeah, just so yeah, I can kind of relate to that in a very, very kind of like very small way, like a toe in the water. But I see the fascination with it and just the appeal. Um, yeah, so oh, the one thing I was going to just for kicks, um, like what's your kind of music reference point in terms of like what you're listening to? What it could be obscure, who cares really? I'm not kind of like
Yeah,
um it doesn't have to be, things that people might recognize, but who kind of was maybe the
for sure.
generation before that you were like, oh, this is the thing to do in the music scene.
Yeah, so my tastes are like all over the place for sure. Oh man. I'm just gonna go with what I've been listening to lately because
Go
it's
for it.
just there's too many. I'm really into this artist, Ash Nico, which is weird because that's not typically the kind of stuff I listen to, but she's fierce, like just amazing stuff. Also listening to a lot of Japanese rock and rap. There's an artist, Chanmina and A Witch. They're like just really cool, cutting edge stuff out of Japan right now. Um, Also very into all the new like the neo psychedelic groups like the OCs, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. Uh, Super into this artist Chelsea Wolfe. She's this solo act. She's kind of sludge goth. I don't know. Really great. And I think like some of my like enduring bands would be the Melvins and uh love anything Jello Biafra has done, especially when he teamed up with the Melvins. That was a fun project. Um, and man, there's millions more, but uh La Butcherettes is this really cool group. I like a lot of female fronted groups, especially as a, front woman, a former front woman of a band. There's a lot of female empowerment going on that I always like to get behind. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Um, so yeah, we'll kind of make the connection to writing a little bit more. And um, what was the inspiration then? Kind of there's a little bit of a gap in the timeline, but kind of going forward,
For
the
sure.
inspiration to start the Weird Lit Mag, an online publication. Um, Kind of what were some of the steps that led up to that?
So my this writing group that I started, uh, we were talking one night in one of our groups or one of our meetings, and I brought up the idea of starting a lit mag because I had been thinking about, I don't know, that writing is such a solitary thing. And there's so many things I love about that, especially after having been in a band for so long. It felt good to be like, oh my God, I have all the control. It's all up to me. I get to do everything. Well, that's great, but it is lonely and it's a lot of work. And I started thinking, what is my next like group project? Because that's definitely been a theme in my life is group creative endeavors. And I don't know where I honestly, I'm not sure. I think the idea just popped in my head one night and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna ask the Squatchers, which is what we call each other in our Sasquatch club. I'm gonna ask the Squatchers if they're interested. And I brought it up and they jumped on it. They're like, oh my God, yes, we should do this. This would be awesome. And uh I kind of presented it as this is going to be my literary band. Like, I'm going to I want to apply what I learned as a band leader to a lit journal. And, you know, we all have very different backgrounds from each other, which I am so grateful for. I love that. But we do all have in common this kind of, we all march to the beat of our own drums. We're all little, you know, uh, rascally, I guess. um, and also I feel like I don't know, we wanted to create a platform. Well, it's come to be kind of our tagline is we wanted to create a platform for the weird and boundless because that's what we consider ourselves and what we want to see more of out there. And that conversation led to many more. And at some point, one of my senior editors, Fawn, she and I met up over some beers and kind of mapped out what this thing would look like and started a Google Drive and made all these documents with all the lists of the things. And here we are. We built it, and we're building the plane as we're flying it, so to speak. So yeah, but that's our origin story.
Yeah, that's the DIY ethos is kind of this through line that is, might not seem like the same thing, being in a band, being an editor of a lit mag,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
there's this kind of like you said, you're creating something and saying, all right, is this going to work? Okay, we got this far with it. We have to change this, change that. We can get a little
Yeah.
bit further and, see where it goes. Yeah, so I definitely appreciate the aspect of starting it without, these maybe clear cut, having everything, all the ducks in
Hmm.
the row, to use that expression,
Hmm.
to an extent, right? You have a plan, but being able to get it off the ground, start it, see what happens, make adjustments, keep going.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, you mentioned your third issue is nearly coming out and probably out by the time this conversation is public.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, what's been the experience of issue one to issue three? Has there been, bumps in the road, things that you didn't expect, good, the bad, so on?
Yeah, there's all of the above for sure. Yeah, this will be the third issue. I will say that with each issue, we've definitely learned and grown, which is the goal. Um, fine-tuning the submissions process has been really interesting and rewarding. Kind of figuring out what it is exactly that we're looking for. That was the first thing that was, a real challenge in our first issue that we put out. We After that we ended up definitely refining on our site what we were looking for because we got a lot of stuff we weren't expecting, and that was interesting, but not always helpful. um, yeah, I feel like we've fine-tuned the process quite well at this point. I mean, it's as soon as you're comfortable with a thing, a wrench gets thrown in and you're going to have to change, and that's fine. We expect that. But this issue has the process for getting this issue out has gone even more smoothly than the last one. So that's really promising. That feels good. Um, we read blind. We've been doing that since the start, and that's been something that's been really important to us. So, kind of figuring out how exactly, like how to technically do that was kind of a fun thing. And I am personally really, really excited about the results of that. Like we're finding that reading blind, obviously, we're not going to be biased in any way because we don't know who this is. But what I was really excited about was the array of folks who we end up publishing, and that um, without without any kind of cherry picking, we end up getting such a variety of folks, and that's just so awesome to me. It's exciting, especially because we're asking for something a little different. We're looking for weird, and I love seeing how many different types of weirdos there are out there. It's really cool. Um, yeah, I would say we're growing faster than I anticipated, and that's a really cool problem to have. Uh, we're looking to, get some more people involved for the next issue to help take on some of the work because uh just like any startup, we all wear a lot of different hats. And we're all ready to kind of hand off some of those hats to other people who are interested. So that's going to be interesting for next year. We're going to be, growing even more. Um,
Yeah, so I mean, you used the word like absurd or absurdist a bit
Mhm.
earlier,
Mhm.
and I'm just curious, like for people out there who have work to submit, like how do
Mhm.
you like maybe define that? I know that the point is to be boundless in what you're kind of representing as as your publication,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
just can you speak to like, how do you kind of find the issues so far that they do hang together? Um, and as far as like people who want to submit stuff, like
Mhm.
what should they submit,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
kind of like tips to make sure they send you the kind of stuff that you're looking for.
For sure. Well, the first thing I say is the same thing that I have read from almost every lit mag when I'm looking for places to submit, and that is to read one or two issues. So that definitely helps. But yeah, in general, we're looking for weird, and I don't mean weird for the sake of being weird. We want substantive weird. We want something that has real depth. Um, I uh, talking about absurdist works, I guess there's two prongs to that. One is like absurdism as in like philosophical absurdism, like Camus, like the like myth of Sisyphus is like one of my driving works. I don't know, it like has really informed my writing. Like I am really into, human condition and it's like the mysteries of it that we can't actually answer, that kind of stuff. But yeah, and then absurdity as in just looking at modern culture and some of the absurdities that we all endure and participate in that are really, just like pointless or silly or outdated, but somehow we're still stuck in them. Very like Kafkaesque stuff. We seem to get a lot of darker themed stories, and I love that. Some of the one of our editors definitely would prefer some more hopeful things, and I agree. I think it would be nice to get some stories that maybe go dark but do offer some kind of hope. Um, I mentioned earlier my obsession with cryptids. If I could just get some stories in with cryptids exploring their own existence, that would be really cool. Those stories would automatically make it through the first round just because I would, like yes, cryptid stuff. Um yeah, I don't know. I just we all feel all of us at Weird Lit really feel like there are certain truths that can be told through the surreal much more easily or clearly than through realist fiction. And that's the stuff we're after is, these like sometimes harder truths or maybe new truths. I don't know. I just sometimes it's easier to tell a story when you can mess with reality. And that's kind of what we're after.
Yeah. So is it open to visual art as well, poetry? Are these different forms in
So
addition to fiction, or is it
we're
just fiction?
not we're primarily fiction and short fiction. We take stuff up to 3,000 words. Um and I have a personal preference for under 1,000, but up to 3,000 is great. Um, we are not taking poetry submissions. That could change in the future for sure. We just we're not willing to, get into that quite yet. And we do take art submissions. Some of the art that we've gotten has been so fantastic. Well, and that Lindy was, we published her art in the last issue, which was wonderful. And that's, yeah, I'm so grateful to have met her through that avenue. It was really cool. Um, but yeah, I'm especially excited for the artwork that we have for this issue. It's gonna be really cool. Yeah, so art, I mean, weird, it can be interpreted in so many ways, but and I don't know that I really I don't know if there's anything specific we're looking for. Just I think we know it when we see it. Hopefully, at some point, I'll have a better way to describe what we're looking for. But yeah, just weird stuff. The first artist that our first issue, we had three different artists, and the artist who did our cover, his name is Mark Rogers, and I've been seeing his stuff online for a couple of years. And there's the image we use for the cover specifically. I saw that and was just I actually saw it way before we started the Lit Mag, and I thought if I did a lit journal, that's the stuff. Like because it's this painting of there's like Sasquatch and Mothman and all these weirdos all together in a forest. And that just felt like it summed up what I was after. Um, Same kind of deal with this new artist that are for the next issue. We saw it and we're like, that's weird lit. That's exactly what we're after. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So I think that gives a pretty good summary of like what you're looking for. And then how just kind of the boring question, how do people submit? Where do they go? What's just the
So
process of that?
So we have a submission form on our website during open windows. The next submission window, I'm fairly certain is opens January 15th for our spring issue. Yeah, you can go there. We're you can track your submissions to us on Duotrope and Chill Subs, which I find both of those so useful. Um, yeah, our spring issue will be out toward at the spring equinox. And that will be right before AWP in LA, which we will be at AWP next year. We've got a little table. We're like super excited for it. Um, so yeah, and we'll probably have that issue on display when we're down there. So it should be a fun time.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there anything you want to share, talk about that we haven't covered yet, um, that's on your mind?
Something that's been just wonderful, but also surprising to me has been how community has kind of sprouted up around us. It's something that I'm just so grateful for. Um, and I feel like, the type of work that we enjoy reading and writing and publishing, the authors are often so original and um, kind of divergent thinkers. And I am just, as one of these weirdos myself, it's very reassuring to find others out there. And yeah, this community that we're building is so fantastic. And I like am just really excited to see how that grows in the future. And I really encourage people to get involved. We're going to be starting a newsletter next month. And when you submit, you can sign up for that. And I highly encourage people to do so because we're going to be pretty active. We're going to have a lot of fun things going on. I feel like with Weird Lit, we're exploring the gray areas. And in our modern culture, everything really feels black and white. Everything feels so divisive. And I kind of want to create this space where everyone who's fed up with that can come play, you know? It's like hang out in the gray areas. Let's get comfortable with weirdness and ambiguity and uncertainty, and let's make art out of it. So that's kind of what we're after.
It sounds like a good sales pitch to me. I'd be on
Yeah,
board with that.
right on.
Yeah. Um, what's your, you mentioned, I think, Bigfoot a couple of times. Is that your favorite cryptid figure? Is there one more appealing to you?
No, Sasquatch has a real place in my heart. So part of it is growing up in the Pacific Northwest. And I actually grew up on an Indian reservation in up here. And which for some reason the reservations around here are famous for having lots of Sasquatch. Um, so I grew up with it just being part of like most of us around in this area. It's just part of your day to day is that Sasquatch is the thing. So yeah, that's definitely my favorite. I also recently heard of this cryptid called the Squatch. Wait, was that what it was called? It's this like weird creature, I think out of Pennsylvania that is really ugly and hideous, and its skin is all wrinkly and gross, and the creature itself is so depressed about its own appearance that it's constantly crying, and it leaves this trail of tears everywhere. And I just love that. I just think it's great. I love what I love about cryptids is, I mean, the what they represent of our culture, basically, the fears and hopes that humans put into them. That's what I'm fascinated with. And Sasquatch in particular, I have I've gone down some real rabbit holes and explored the community. I've been to several conferences purely even just for the anthropological aspect of seeing the communities that are like so into Sasquatch. And I don't know, it's really interesting source material. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know what our local, I'm over in Western New York in Buffalo.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's like maybe a regional cryptid that I don't know about. Maybe there
You
is
just
one.
don't
I mean,
know. Yeah.
there might be something in Lake Erie that
Oh,
is,
I'm sure.
who knows?
Yeah.
Um, so
I
maybe,
think
yeah,
I
maybe I'll have to
I
I'll
think part
YouTube
of
that and
the
see what happens.
oh, well, yeah, have fun. I think a big part of the appeal too is just, in our modern age, like it feels like everything's been done, everything's been discovered. And the idea that there can be these creatures out there that we have not yet proven exist is wonderful. I think, especially for creatives, to just wonder. I don't need an answer. I just like to wonder about it. And I think we all need more of that, not needing the answer. It's living in the question that is the point. So,
Yeah, and like you said, it's more interesting than like, oh, it's a new species of beetle that we found in,
right.
in Ecuador. It's like, well, that's
Right.
cool. And, you could appreciate the new discovery or the
Right.
mystery of like, why has nobody discovered this? But yeah, it's this exaggerated expression of of an unknown and the impulse to explore, like you said,
Yeah.
the darker kind of like psyche and all that good stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah, I appreciate that. All right. So, Weird Lit Mag is the primary kind of like go to this place message at the end. Um, so it's weirdlitmag.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's pretty
Yes.
straightforward. And then you could connect via social media. Submissions will be reopening mid-January um, for issue number 4, which will be the upcoming issue when you're hearing this. So yeah, thanks once again for joining in. Thanks to Lindy, which you referred to, shout out for joining us two together. Um, and yeah, it was great talking to you. And hopefully we'll cross paths again soon in terms of this growing creative community out there.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah,
absolutely.
we'll
Yeah,
continue to keep in touch.
for sure. Thanks for having me.
Sure
Yeah.
thing. Talk to
Mm.
you soon.
All right. Thanks.